Hello and welcome to Guy Logic. My name is Temko and today I am giving you my first impressions of the Division beta. Now, what is the Division really? Well, Division is a cover-based pseudo-MMO shooter, much in the vein of Destiny on the PlayStation, and the Division is on the PC. That makes it inherently better, you might say. So, I'm playing the game in the background here, and you'll see some stuttering initially. That is because, regardless of what I did, and I tried a lot of things, I could not get the damn game to run at a stable 60 FPS, and that's also my very first issue I want to bring up in the game, that this game requires a pretty beefy system. It looks gorgeous, but it does require a pretty beefy system to be playable at 60 FPS. If you're a player that can play a game at 30 FPS, you could probably lock it at that. There is some options for that, and I won't go into options in this beta video, but the main thing that you will notice with the beta is you'll see these stutterings, and I want to point out that that is not the recording, that is the game. It drops between 30 and 40 FPS and sometimes stays to 60, but generally whenever you're in an open area, the game will drop to quite a bit lower. And this isn't even on max settings. So it's really weird, and I hope they add some optimization and the like for performance improvements. Obviously, the game is still about a month out from release, so there are still quite a few driver updates and optimizations they can do to improve the game's performance. Now, having said that all of the way, the game looks absolutely gorgeous. The game fits well thematically. It depicts New York, and I've never been to New York, but I'm pretty sure it's an accurate depiction from what I've seen on the internet. And it depicts this pseudo-post-apocalyptic New York with looters and the like. Combat is your average cover-based shooter mechanics. You hide in cover, you shoot behind cover, you reload your gun, and you shoot again, and the enemy AI and players do the same. Once out of cover, you are basically a walking corpse because enemies will shoot you in a few hits, and behind cover they will still try to flash out with grenades and the like. Now, the game is a dual MMO and RPG in one, and I couldn't really tell you whether or not it's doing a good job of that, because the gameplay available in the beta weekend, I say beta weekend, but honestly, it was a glorified demo, because the amount of content available was very limited. We had access to one of the main story missions, one wing out of your 3 available in your hub base area, as well as the first segment of the Dark Zone, which is sort of a pseudo PvP area. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So the amount of content we had access to was very limited. Also, all perks, skill trees, and the like were completely locked. Most access to areas was locked, and all other things are locked as well. So you couldn't really get a good impression of the game, but what is here still gives you a pretty decent impression of the core gameplay you will be experiencing with the Division. Now, when you hear Tom Clancy, you think Rainbow Six, you think Splinter Cell, you think tactical, probably stealth, but definitely team-oriented and definitely realistic depictions of a shooter combat. With the Division, that is not the case. The Division says, you know what, this is a RPG, and RPGs go with numbers. So your guns have DPS, your weapons will fire shots, enemies will take 20, 30, 40 shots to the face, because, one shot to the head will probably mean that PvP is not going to be as fun, and that will definitely mean that AI combat is going to be quite a bit less interesting as a direct result. Now, all of that brings the game to a bit of a juxtaposition. If you go in expecting a Tom Clancy classical title, you will be severely disappointed, because the game does not deliver that. What it does deliver is a very solid cover-based shooter with RPG elements. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you can already see a little bit in the video in the background how I was doing my gear and checking up on my various items. And the game drops a lot of loot. You get this loot from quests, you get this loot from random drops in the world, and you get this loot from completing quests, like any MMO or RPG would provide you with this. You also get loot by crafting, which is also locked in the beta, so I couldn't tell you exactly how that works, but it's going to be there. So all of that is going to give you a bunch of loot, and that loot is going to gear you up. And the higher level you are, the better loot you have access to. So it's not so much a shooter as it is a RPG. Once you're at the highest level, the game tells you, well, you're there, let's go do some PvP. And at that point, you're going to go into the entire numbers game. And I couldn't really get a good feel for that in the beta weekend. But what I did get a feel for was that the combat is going to be very focused around gear and numbers, and less focused around tactical gameplay elements. Doesn't mean there's no tactical gameplay. There is some of it, and you will see a bunch of it in the video here, but the vast majority of it is going to be numbers coupled with a basic understanding of the various gameplay mechanics. Now, what do I say? What do I say when I mean numbers? Well, various weapons are going to give you various boosts. Various weapons are going to have procs in higher rates. You can upgrade your weapons with various components, such as a different muzzle or a bigger magazine and the like. And these are going to give you better chances, proc chances, and the like, including aggro management, reload times, and all the like. If you're thinking, hey, this sounds an awful lot like an MMO, you're right, it does. This sounds like any RPG you have ever seen or heard of in the world. And that's fine, because that's what they're going for. What isn't so much fine is that they're going for this in a very realistic setting. If you've ever watched a movie, whether it be a Rambo movie, or whether it's a movie that tries to take combat in a more original fashion, when you shoot someone in the head, they generally die. So when you're shooting a lifelike opponent in a lifelike depiction of Manhattan, and they don't die, it's sort of a jarring disconnect you have with the game. Obviously, Destiny and the like went around this by saying, oh no, it's a sci-fi universe, they have alien super shell armor, and they don't die in one hit. But these are gang members in hoodies. And unless I checked, I haven't seen many hoodies that can hold up to a barrage of full auto-fire bullets. Obviously, from a gameplay standpoint, this doesn't matter. If you're like me and you don't really give a rat's ass what your enemies look like as long as they explode nice and drop good loot, then in those situations, you won't be bothered by this. If you are someone that's coming in expecting a Tom Clancy title, you will be bothered by this. So be aware what you are getting yourself into. Like I said, I'm not too bothered by this. And the reason I'm not bothered by it is because I am a RPG player by heart. I play many RPGs, I play many MMOs, and that's my to-go genre if I want to relax and have some fun. So for me, this was a nice little break. I'm not generally a fan of Splinter Cell and the like. They're too stressful. So I could relax a little bit, team up with some random people and shoot some things in the head. And they would explode eventually and give me nice shiny loot. What this does mean though, is that the game is going to be heavily reliant on its end game. Are there going to be raids? Are there going to be dungeons? Is it going to be extremely heavy on the story, or is it all going to be about the PvP action? And sadly, we just don't have the answer at this point outside of PR material from Ubisoft, the game's publisher. So we can't tell you. All I can tell you is that the first mission, and that's one you're seeing being played in the background, is pretty fun. I've replayed it a couple of times, and it remained fun, but it's gonna not last you until the end of time. I have to replay this mission about 4 times in the beta, because obviously it was the only mission available, and after 4 times, I felt I had played it enough and wanted something else. But 4 times is pretty decent for a mission to be replayed. And if they add higher difficulty levels, as they have a normal and a hard difficulty here, this is hard you're seeing in the background, then they'll probably add an insane difficulty or something along those lines. I will probably be interested in playing the game a couple more times for this mission, so that's pretty interesting. Now what I will say though is that they're adding a lot of story content. From what I could see from the game world, we've only seen a very small part here in the beta weekend. And if the rest of the world is as finely crafted as this little piece of Manhattan, they're in for a great and fun experience exploring the game world. Now, talking about exploring the game world, you will be doing most of that by running around. Now, running isn't exactly fast, and that means you'll be running a lot. And that also means that you will need to use the fast travel system, which is in the game, but it's not what you would call amazing in the beta right now, as you only have one available spot, which is your home base, which doesn't help you go anywhere because everything is very far away from that location. They have disabled roaming gangs and roving bands and the like in the beta. I'm not sure why they have done this, but one of the things it has had as a result is that the game world feels ridiculously empty, and running around is boring as balls. You're just putting things on autopilot and running over there, and that's it. Another problem with that is that the pathfinding system they have in the game, while adequate, only connects to main roads. It means that any shortcuts through buildings or over rooftops or over the like, which are accessible, are never available unless you know the game map intimately. Now, some people might enjoy this exploration aspect, but if the game world is as empty as it is currently, locking players into a longer path, meaning they have more downtime, meaning they are bored more, is not what I would call good game design or decision making, which really breaks the gameplay quite a bit in terms of how fast you're processing things and what you're doing. So I don't really like that. What I do like, and this is contrary to what I've been hearing other YouTubers say, is the UI. As an MMO player and an RPG player, I am used to very full, cluttered, filled with icons, filled with messages UIs that tell me everything everywhere at once. This UI isn't that. It's simple, it's stripped down, it tells me what I need to know, my hit points, it tells me the cooldowns of my 2 abilities, very simple, it tells me my group, and it displays mission information in a very handy window around the minimap, as well as floating icons in the game world and not flashing arrows on my screen. I really like it. I think it's a very nice UI. It's contextual, so when you equip something it says, hey, you still have X slots left in your inventory, and it does so on the back of your backpack. A very natural location to look at when you're thinking, oh, inventory, backpack, very good. So they have really, in my opinion, nailed the UI in terms of the combination information, aesthetic, and being out of sight. Because it is so minimal, I don't really notice it, even though it is really in your face. Obviously, your opinion and experience may vary greatly, as we have seen from many other YouTubers saying they don't like the UI. And you can see for yourself on the video how the UI looks like and what you may feel of it. One criticism of the UI, and that's probably a bug I will give, is that the mouse controls are sort of fiddly and don't always work as well as they should. So you have to resort to keyboard controls to prevent yourself from smashing your face into your screen because it doesn't operate the way you want it to. I have not had this issue with any of the other gameplay elements, so shooting, running, interacting with the world, but I've had it with the UI trying to equip items or trying to search for a group or party to do a dungeon or raid or mission or whatever they want to call them here. Now, let me go back to a bit about leveling as well as combat in the later stages. Now, you've been seeing combat a little bit in the background here, and most of the combat you'll experience is going to be exactly this. We have no idea yet how various skills and abilities are going to unfold and allow you to customize your character outside of like the weapons and stuff, and the couple of special abilities available right now are only those from the medic tree. We don't know anything yet about any of the other aspects of the game, so maybe there's going to be some specializations later on that will allow people to perform some feats which are currently unavailable, or maybe later game mechanics are going to be introduced that makes this entire thing a bit more complex and mechanically engaging. Now, obviously a large part of making gameplay engaging is introducing complex new mechanics, but also PvP requires lots of engagement. It requires a very strong core gameplay loop as well as very solid mechanics backing up the player combat. Now, player combat in The Division is done in these so-called dark zones. Now, dark zones were very badly explained by Ubisoft, and I'm not sure how they could badly explain something so very simple. It's a group area where you and other players, so not your private instance, other players as well, can run around, do open world objectives such as killing high and hard mobs, as well as PvP. This combined allows you to get loot. This loot though isn't instantly available for use. You have to get it out of the dark zone using a special pickup location, and once you get your loot out of the dark zone, it is available to you for future use. And the question you might have right now is, hey, why would I need to get it out of the dark zone? I just looted it. Isn't that kind of overdone? The reason for that is actually quite ingenious. It's because you're carrying these contaminated items to an extraction point that other players can kill you and take those items. And this will provide a very nice incentive to either group up and protect each other, forming alliances with other players to make sure you both get your items to the extraction point, or this will allow other players to find you and kill you to get your items. Now, there's obviously no reason why players wouldn't just wait on everyone to get out of a hard fight and just kill them all, so there are some mechanics in place to prevent that. Players that try to kill another player will eventually go rogue and show up on a minimap for all other players in the area to find, kill, hunt down, and destroy. Now, this doesn't mean that there are no loopholes or exploits people can use, and there are many reports of hacking in the game. And there's even more reports of people grouping up at high levels and camping lower level areas. So Ubisoft definitely has some issues to work out before release. If these issues don't get sorted, then the entire PvP aspect will collapse in one big pile of rubble. If they do get them sorted, the base gameplay elements for the PvP areas are in place, and they are very interesting and fun. The shooting is interesting, the tension with carrying items that may be very good, trying to get them out of the dark zone for future use is very interesting, and the PvP and PvE aspects of teaming up and ganging up on people are very interesting. So all in all, the dark zones are really well executed if they get a handle on the exploitation issues. And that's also one of the last points I want to touch on, is that currently, I want to stress that repeatedly, we have very little to go on for this beta weekend. The crafting is locked, the skill trees are locked, higher levels are locked, and most of the content is locked away. We have one mission, this is the one you see in the background, and one area of a dark zone. We know what loot works like, we know how upgrades are going to work like. It's mostly going to be level and loot based as well as encounter based. So you have your greens, you have your blues, you have your purples, etc, etc, and these are going to be objectively better depending on the weapon you have. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is the weapons. When you're playing Diablo, when you're playing a MMO like World of Warcraft or whatever MMO flavor you prefer, all loot at higher levels provides flashy visuals, provides flashy effects, flaming halos, exploding castles, nuclear bombs, name it, you can probably find an example of it. This is obviously to entrance you with saying, hey you have this amazing item, this item looks so cool, use this item. The problem with the Division there is that the items don't really look that way because it's trying to be realistic. So your magical gun of plus 12 and destruction is still going to look like the magical gun of nothing. And I'm not sure how they can fix this, or even if they should fix this, because it does fit thematically with the game, but it does make it a bit harder to spot effectively who has the high-end items and who doesn't. Especially in a PvP setting, where you might need to know these things on the fly to know if you need to turn around and run the hell away from an opponent or player. So all in all, let me bring you to my conclusion here, is that I like Tom Clancy's The Division. I like it because it's not an average shooter. I like it because it's an RPG. I like it because numbers. That's my sort of thing. I like it because the world is really cool. I like the gameplay, and I like the various things you can do within the world, such as crafting and base building. All of these things really appeal to me as a MMO and RPG player. And if you're the like player I am, then these things will appeal to you in The Division because it is finely crafted, AAA quality that has a few issues here and there, but we hope strongly that these will be fixed before release. If not, reviews will tell, and you will know when these reviews appear online. If you're not this kind of player, I'd wait out on The Division for a little bit to see where they're heading out with these sort of things. So, I want to thank all of you for watching this beta impression of The Division. If you liked this video, press that like button. If you didn't like the video, press the dislike button. It's there for a reason. Also, leave us a comment with your thoughts on the gameplay and the Division beta. And if you want to see more content on Guy Logic, content like this, content like reviews, and content like gaming news, just press that subscribe button, and we'll see you right here on Guy Logic next time.
Make a hell of a team anyway. When you get back to the base, we'll talk to Candle, and we'll see what she can do for us.